The afternoon light was still warm when the cameras caught them. May 1st, 2025. A commercial district in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. Surveillance footage rolls. Unremarkable, routine, the kind of footage that gets reviewed and deleted and forgotten. Except this time, it wouldn't be forgotten. This time, it would become the most important piece of evidence in one of the most haunting missing children cases in Canadian history. The footage shows a family, a mother, a stepfather, a baby, and two children, 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, moving through their day like any other family on any other Thursday afternoon. Nothing urgent, nothing alarming, no raised voices, no signs of distress, no indication to any observer watching in real time that the world was about to fracture around these two small children. Within 24 hours, both children would be gone, and that surveillance footage, those few seconds of ordinary life captured on an ordinary camera in an ordinary shopping area, will become the last verifiable proof that Lily and Jack Sullivan were ever seen alive by anyone outside their immediate family. Let that land for a moment. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police has confirmed it, officially, publicly, unambiguously. The footage from May 1st, 2025, represents the final confirmed public sighting of Lily and Jack Sullivan. Full stop. The question that has consumed investigators for 8 months, the question that has robbed an entire community of sleep, is devastatingly simple. What happened between that moment captured on camera and the frantic 911 call placed the very next morning? What happened in those hours? What happened inside that house? And where are Lily and Jack Sullivan now? This is not a cold case. This is not a mystery that faded from the headlines and slipped into obscurity. 8 months later, the RCMP is still investigating. 8 months later, a $150,000 reward sits unclaimed. 8 months later, 2 children are still missing. And 8 months later, that surveillance footage from May 1st remains the anchor point of everything. The fixed star in the sky full of unanswered questions. To understand why that footage matters so profoundly, you have to understand what came before it, and more importantly, what came after. The timeline begins not on May 1st, but a few days earlier. School records confirm that the last day Lily and Jack attended Salt Springs Elementary School, located roughly 18 kilometers from the family's rural home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, was Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. 2 days before their disappearance. 2 days before that surveillance camera captured what would become the last glimpse the world would ever have of them. Wednesday, April 30th, was a scheduled professional development day for teachers. No school. The children were home. Thursday, May 1st, the day that would define everything. The children were again kept home. Their stepfather, Daniel Martel, later stated that 6-year-old Lily had developed a cough. She wasn't feeling well. A reasonable decision. A parental decision. One that, in retrospect, carries an unbearable weight, because it meant the last people outside the household to see Lily and Jack alive were not their teachers, not their classmates, not anyone at Salt Springs Elementary. It was a surveillance camera in a commercial area of New Glasgow on an otherwise unremarkable Thursday afternoon. That is the starting point of this investigation. That is the edge of the map. Everything investigators know with certainty ends there. In that footage, in that afternoon, in those final visible seconds of 2 children who have not been seen since. If you are following the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, if you believe these children deserve answers, if you believe the truth matters, subscribe to Unsolved Archive right now and turn on notifications. We don't just cover these stories. We dig into them. We examine the evidence, dissect the timelines, and refuse to let the cases the world needs to remember fade into silence. Because Lily and Jack Sullivan have not been found. And this story is far from over. Stay with us. The 911 call came in at 10:01 in the morning, May 2nd, 2025. A rural property on Gearlock Road in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. The caller reported that 2 children, 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, were missing from the family home. According to the account given by their mother, Malia Brooks Murray, and stepfather, Daniel Martel, the morning had begun without alarm. The children had been in the kitchen. The adults took their 16-month-old baby into the bedroom to rest. when the house went quiet. That particular silence that every parent instinctively recognizes as wrong. They went to check. The children were not in the kitchen. They searched the house. They searched the property. They called out. They moved through the surrounding woods, pushing through brush and branches, calling names into a landscape that did not answer back. Lily and Jack were gone. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary in its scale. Within hours of that 911 call, Nova Scotia mobilized. More than 160 trained search and rescue volunteers deployed into dense, unforgiving forest terrain. Helicopters swept overhead in low passes. Drones mapped vast stretches of wilderness from above. Police dogs worked the ground. Tracking sent trails through undergrowth and across open fields. Cadaver dogs, trained to detect the presence of human remains, combed through nearly 40 kilometers of brutal backcountry. The search was not small. It was not underfunded. It was not half-hearted. It was one of the largest, most resource-intensive search operations in the history of Nova Scotia. And it found nothing. No clothing. No footprints. No belongings. No trace of Lily or Jack Sullivan anywhere in those 40 kilometers of search wilderness. Nothing left behind. Nothing dropped. Nothing disturbed in the way you would expect if two small children, a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, had wandered into the woods alone on a May morning. Nothing. That absence, that total, absolute lack of physical evidence, did not go unnoticed by investigators. It did not fit the profile of a straightforward missing children scenario. Children who wander leave traces. They drop things. They break branches. They move in patterns that trained dogs and experienced trackers can follow. The search found none of that. 8 months later, no trace of Lily and Jack Sullivan has ever been found. Not a thread of clothing. Not a shoe. Not a single item that belonged to either child. In the vacuum left behind by that search, investigators turned their focus to the timeline, specifically to the gap, the critical, troubling, heavily scrutinized gap between the afternoon of May 1st and the morning of May 2nd. Because here's what the evidence shows. The last confirmed sighting of Lily and Jack Sullivan was not on May 2nd, the day they were reported missing. It was the day before. It was that surveillance footage. That afternoon, that unremarkable commercial district in New Glasgow, where the family appeared calm, the children appeared healthy, and nothing on the surface appeared wrong. RCMP Corporal Sandy Mtheru of the Northeast Nova Major Crime Unit confirmed it publicly. In a press release that the RCMP stood behind, Corporal Mtheru stated that investigators had confirmed Lily and Jack were observed in public with family members on the afternoon of May 1st. The footage was real. The timestamp was verified. The children were alive. And after that, nothing. No neighbor saw them. No passing driver caught a glimpse of them playing outside. No delivery. No visitor. No one walking along the road near the family's rural property reported any sighting of either child after the family returned home that evening. Nearly 24 hours passed between the last surveillance sighting and the moment that 911 call connected. 24 hours during which Lily and Jack Sullivan existed, as far as the outside world is concerned, only in the accounts of the adults inside that house. That gap is where this investigation lives. That gap is where every question begins, and every answer remains frustratingly, painfully elusive. The footage from May 1st is not just evidence. It is a dividing line, the moment before and the silence after. Coming up, we go deeper into what that footage actually shows, why investigators consider a cornerstone of the case, and what the RCMP statements reveal about where this investigation is truly focused. Don't go anywhere. Surveillance cameras don't lie. That is a foundational truth that makes the May 1st footage so significant, so immovable, in the investigation into the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. In a case riddled with uncertainty, shadowed by unanswerable questions, and haunted by the kind of silence that investigators find more troubling than noise, the footage is one of the few things that cannot be disputed, reinterpreted, or explained away. It shows what it shows. 2 children, alive, in public, on the afternoon of May 1st, 2025. But to truly understand why this footage has become the cornerstone of the RCMP investigation, you have to understand what surveillance evidence actually does in a missing persons case, and why investigators treat it differently from every other category of evidence they collect. Witness testimony is fallible. Human memory is notoriously unreliable, shaped by emotion, distorted by time, influenced by suggestion. A witness who saw something on May 1st and is interviewed weeks later may remember it differently. They may fill gaps with assumption. They may reconstruct details their brain never actually captured. This is not dishonesty. It is simply how human memory works, and investigators know it. Forensic evidence is powerful but interpretive. Physical evidence requires analysis, context, and expert testimony to mean anything in a courtroom. Its significance can be challenged. Its chain of custody can be questioned. Its conclusions can be disputed by competing experts. But video evidence, time-stamped, location-verified surveillance footage, operates in a different category entirely. It is objective. It is fixed. It does not misremember. It does not get nervous under cross-examination. It does not change its story. The May 1st footage does three things that no other piece of evidence in this case can do. First, it eliminates doubt about the children's condition. As of the afternoon of May 1st, 2025, Lily and Jack Sullivan were alive. They were not injured. They were not in visible distress. They were functioning, moving, present children in a public space. This is not someone's recollection. This is recorded reality. Second, it establishes an unbreakable timeline anchor. Investigators now have a fixed point, a verified, time-stamped, confirmed moment from which everything else must be measured. The afternoon of May 1st. That is where the clock starts. Everything that matters in this investigation happened after that moment. Third, and this is where the footage becomes genuinely chilling, it creates a wall of silence. After the camera captured that footage, after the family loaded into their vehicle and headed back toward Lansdowne Station, no independent witness ever saw Lily and Jack Sullivan again. Not once. Not briefly. Not in passing. That silence is not normal. Children are visible, especially young children in rural communities where neighbors notice things, where dogs bark at movement, where the sound of kids playing carries across quiet fields. 4-year-old Jack and 6-year-old Lily were not invisible members of their community. They attended Salt Springs Elementary. They existed in the social fabric of their area. And yet after that surveillance camera caught them on May 1st, they vanished from public reception entirely. Nearly a full day before anyone reported them missing. Daniel Martel confirmed in an interview with CBC News that police had retrieved the surveillance footage showing the entire family. Himself, Malia Brooks Murray, their baby, Lily and Jack, in the New Glasgow area that afternoon. He confirmed that the precise location of the footage could not be disclosed, citing the active investigation. He confirmed the footage existed. What the footage shows, according to sources familiar with the investigation, is a family going about what appeared to be routine errands in a commercial area. The children were behaving normally. The adults were calm. There were no visible signs of conflict, no indicators of distress, nothing that an observer watching in real time would have flagged as concerning. An ordinary family, an ordinary afternoon, an ordinary moment, except it wasn't ordinary at all, because it was the last one, the last moment those two children existed in the verifiable world, the world outside the walls of their home on Gearlock Road. The RCMP has not released the footage publicly. This, too, is deliberate, calculated, and entirely standard in serious investigations. Releasing surveillance footage prematurely can contaminate witness memory. People who may have seen something begin to reconstruct their recollections around what they saw on a screen, rather than what they genuinely remember. It can tip off individuals under scrutiny. It can compromise future legal proceedings in ways that are difficult or impossible to repair. So the footage remained protected, locked in the investigation, known to exist, but not available for public consumption. What the RCMP has given the public instead is confirmation, firm, unambiguous confirmation, that the footage exists, that it shows Lily and Jack Sullivan alive on May 1st, and that it represents the final verified sighting of either child. That confirmation alone is devastating in its implications. Because of the last time anyone outside the household can confirm seeing these children was May 1st afternoon, and the 911 call didn't come until 10:01 the following morning. Then whatever happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan happened inside a window of time that belongs almost entirely to the people who were in that house with them. That is not an accusation. The RCMP has not made one, but it is a reality. And it is a reality the investigation cannot ignore. The footage from May 1st is the edge of the known world in this case. Everything before it can be verified. Everything after dissolves into accounts, claims, and a silence so complete it has driven investigators to comb 40 kilometers of wilderness, review more than 8,100 videos, and follow up on over 1,000 public tips, and still come up empty. Somewhere beyond that surveillance footage, beyond that last visible afternoon, is the truth about what happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan. Investigators are still looking for it. So are we. 86. That is the number of formal interviews the RCMP has conducted in connection with the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan. 86. In a case involving 2 missing children from a rural Nova Scotia community, that number is staggering. It speaks to the depth, the reach, and the relentless determination of an investigation that is refused, despite the absence of physical evidence, despite the lack of a confirmed crime scene, despite the deafening silence of the wilderness, to stop asking questions. More than 1,030 tips have been submitted by members of the public. More than 8,100 videos, dashcam footage, doorbell cameras, security recordings, phone clips have been reviewed by investigators searching for any frame, any second, any pixel that might show where Lily and Jack went after May 1st. 7 individuals connected to the case have been administered polygraph examinations. And yet, no charges, no arrests, no answers. Daniel Martel has stated publicly that he passed his polygraph examination. Malia Brooks Murray has reportedly passed hers as well. Cody Sullivan, the biological father of Lily and Jack, a man who had no contact with the children at the time of their disappearance, also submitted a polygraph testing and reportedly passed. 4 additional individuals connected to the case were tested. Their results have not changed the course of the investigation. Here's what you need to understand about polygraph examinations in the context of a Canadian criminal investigation. They are tools, not verdicts. Polygraphs measure physiological responses, changes in heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory patterns, skin conductivity that can be associated with deception. They do not measure truth. They cannot read minds. They cannot distinguish between a person who is lying and a person who is terrified, grieving, or simply physiologically calm under pressure. More critically, polygraph results are not admissible as evidence in Canadian courts. They cannot convict. They cannot exonerate. They are investigative instruments, nothing more. The RCMP uses them to generate leads, to identify inconsistencies, to guide the direction of inquiry. But a past polygraph does not close a door. It does not remove someone from consideration. It does not end scrutiny. The RCMP knows this, and so the investigation has continued, methodical, patient, building. In August 2025, court documents were released, heavily redacted, stripped of specifics that could compromise ongoing proceedings, but revealing in what they did disclose. As of July 16th, 2025, the RCMP stated that they no longer consider the case to be criminal in nature. Read that carefully, because what it does not say is just as important as what it does. It does not say no crime was committed. It does not say the adults in the household are cleared. It does not say the case is closed or the investigation is winding down. It says that at that specific point in time, July 16th, the evidence available did not support the laying of criminal charges. The RCMP simultaneously and explicitly stated that they had not ruled out that the disappearance could be suspicious. That is extraordinarily careful language from investigators who choose their words with precision. It is the language of people who are building something, assembling a picture piece by piece, evidence by evidence, interview by interview, without committing to a conclusion the evidence cannot yet fully support. Superintendent Dan Maroro of the Nova Scotia RCMP described this case as unlike anything he had encountered in 33 years of policing. 33 years. Hundreds of investigations. Countless missing persons cases. And this one, 2 small children, a rural property, a surveillance camera, and a silence that stretches 8 months and counting, stand apart. Staff Sergeant Chris McCain offered perhaps the most telling phrasing of anyone connected to the official investigation. He spoke of investigators working toward long-term justice, of forming pictures of what may have taken place, of building a foundation, long-term justice. That phrase deserves to sit with you for a moment. It is not the language of an investigation approaching closure. It is not the language of a team that believes the answers are weeks away. It is a language of investigators who are committed, deeply, seriously committed, to ensuring that when this case reaches its conclusion, the conclusions are unassailable. That whatever picture they have formed in those 86 interviews and 1,030 tips and 8,100 videos reviewed, when it finally comes to light, it will hold. Because some cases cannot afford to be rushed. Some cases, if prosecuted prematurely, collapse. Some cases require patience that feels unbearable to the families waiting, to the communities watching, to the public demanding answers. The RCMP appears to believe this is one of those cases. Meanwhile, a $150,000 reward offered by the government of Nova Scotia remains unclaimed. Vigils have been held in Pictou County. Volunteers have continued to search independently, walking trails and tree lanes on their own time, driven by the particular anguish that missing children cases produce in communities that cannot look away. The surveillance footage from May 1st anchors all of it. It is the one undeniable truth in a case built almost entirely on questions. And it continues to point investigators and everyone watching toward the hours that followed, the hours no camera captured, the hours no independent witness can account for, the hours that contain the truth about where Lily and Jack Sullivan are now. Some silences speak louder than any evidence ever could. In the 8 months since Lily and Jack Sullivan were reported missing, investigators have spoken to 86 people, reviewed more than 8,100 videos, and followed up on over 1,000 tips from the public that has refused to stop caring about two small children who vanished from a rural Nova Scotia property on a May morning. They have deployed helicopters, drones, cadaver dogs, and search teams through nearly 40 kilometers of dense, punishing wilderness. And through all of it, through every interview, every tip, every frame of footage reviewed, every centimeter of forest floor examined, one truth has remained constant, unmovable, and deeply troubling. No one saw Lily and Jack Sullivan after the afternoon of May 1st, 2025. Not a neighbor, not a passing driver, not a delivery person, not a friend, an extended family member, a teacher, or a stranger who happened to glance toward the family property on Gearlock Road. In a rural community where neighbors notice things, where the sound of children playing carries across quiet fields, where dogs respond to movement, where people know each other's routines. Two children between the ages of 4 and 6 became completely invisible, nearly 24 hours before anyone reported them missing. That invisibility is not just a detail. It is not background information or ambient context in a complicated case. It is the beating heart of this investigation. It is the thing that keeps investigators awake. It is the thing that the RCMP's careful, precise, deliberately measured public statements keep circling back to without ever quite landing on directly. Because here is the uncomfortable arithmetic of this case. The gap between the last confirmed sighting and the 911 call belongs almost entirely to people inside that house. The window of time during which something, whatever it was, happened to Lily and Jack Sullivan is a window that only a handful of people were present for. A window that no camera captured. A window that no independent witness can illuminate. The surveillance footage from May 1st defines the edge of that window on one side. The 911 call defines it on the other. Everything in between remains dark. Consider what we know about the hours that fell inside that darkness. According to the account provided by Daniel Martell and Malia Brooks Murray, the evening of May 1st passed normally. The family was home. The children were inside. Everything was fine. The morning of May 2nd began the same way. Children in the kitchen, adults present, a household waking up like any other. Then the adults took their 16-month-old baby into the bedroom to nap. The house went quiet. When they emerged, the children were gone. That is the account. That is what was told to investigators in the hours after that 911 call connected. And investigators have been examining it, probing it, testing it, measuring it against physical evidence and forensic analysis, and the results of those 7 polygraph examinations ever since. What they have found, or more precisely what they have not found, is the source of the tension that defines this case. No physical evidence placing the children outside the home that morning. No trail, no trace, no sign that two young children passed through 40 kilometers of wilderness and left nothing behind. Nothing that a cadaver dog, a search team, a drone, or a helicopter could locate in one of the most resource-intensive search operations Nova Scotia has ever mounted. The absence of evidence is itself a form of evidence. Investigators know this. Prosecutors know this. And the RCMP's deliberate, patient, long-term approach to this investigation suggests strongly that they are treating it exactly that way. There are people in Pictou County, in the broader Nova Scotia community, across Canada, and among the thousands following this case internationally, who believe someone knows something. Someone who has not yet come forward. Someone who saw something on the afternoon or evening of May 1st, or the morning of May 2nd, that they have not told investigators about. Someone whose conscience has been carrying a weight that grows heavier with every month that passes without answers. The RCMP believes this too. It is why the tips line remains active. It is why the $150,000 reward remains on the table. It is why investigators continue to make public appeals, carefully worded, strategically timed, reminding anyone with information that coming forward is still possible, that it is never too late, that what they know could be the piece that finally breaks this case open. Because missing children cases do break, sometimes years later, sometimes through a single phone call, sometimes through a conscience that finally fractures under the weight of what has been asked to hold. The surveillance footage from May 1st is a promise of sorts, a promise that the truth exists, that it happened somewhere, that it left traces even if those traces have not yet been found. Lily and Jack Sullivan were alive that afternoon. They were real, present, visible children moving through the world. They did not simply cease to exist. Something happened to them. And somewhere, in someone's memory, in someone's silence, in some piece of evidence not yet surfaced or not yet understood, is the answer to what that something was. The RCMP has not stopped looking. The community has not stopped searching. And the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan has not faded, not into background noise of a news cycle, not into the archive of unresolved cases that the world eventually stops talking about. It remains open. It remains urgent. It remains the kind of case that demands resolution not just for the investigators working it, but for every person who looked at that surveillance footage and saw two ordinary children on an ordinary afternoon, and understood, with a grief that is hard to articulate, that this was the last time anyone would see them. The footage exists. The children existed. The truth exists. Someone knows where it is. This is where we arrive. 8 months in. 2 children still missing. A surveillance camera that captured the last verified moment they were alive, and a silence after it that has swallowed everything investigators have thrown into it, without giving a single thing back. Lily Sullivan was 6 years old. Jack Sullivan was 4. Let those ages sit with you for a moment, not as data points in a timeline, not as details in an investigative summary, as children. A 6-year-old girl with a cough who was kept home from school on a Thursday. A 4-year-old boy walking through a commercial area in New Glasgow on what should have been an ordinary afternoon. Children who did not know, could not have known, that the camera watching them that day was recording the last public moment of their lives. That is what this case is. Underneath all the timelines and polygraphs and cadaver dog deployments and redacted court documents, it is the story of 2 children who were there and then were not, who appeared on a screen, alive and unremarkable, and then stepped out of frame of the verifiable world and never stepped back in. The RCMP has conducted 86 formal interviews. They have reviewed 8,100 videos. They have followed more than 1,000 tips. They have administered polygraph examinations to 7 individuals. They have searched nearly 40 kilometers of wilderness with some of the most sophisticated tools available to modern law enforcement. They have described the investigation as a priority. They have spoken of long-term justice. They have chosen every word in every public statement with the precision of people who know that what they say and what they do not say will one day matter enormously in a courtroom or coroner's inquiry or both. And through all of it, they have returned again and again to May 1st, to that footage, to that afternoon, to the last confirmed moment, because that is where the truth begins. Not where it ends, where it begins. The footage does not tell us what happened to Lily, and Jack Sullivan. It tells us when the window opened. It tells us that whatever came after, whatever unfolded in those unwitnessed hours between the afternoon of May 1st and the 911 call at 10:01 on the morning of May 2nd, it happened. It is real. It has a shape, even if that shape has not yet fully emerged from the darkness that surrounds it. Superintendent Dan Marrero said it himself. This case is unlike anything in 33 years of policing. That is not a throwaway line from a press conference. That is a senior law enforcement official telling the public, in the only language available to someone operating inside an active investigation, that this case is not ordinary, that what happened here, whatever it was, falls outside the boundaries of what investigators typically encounter. That should mean something to everyone watching. The Nova Scotia government has placed $150,000 on the table for information of investigative value. Not information that solves the case. Not a confession. Information of investigative value. A detail. A sighting. A conversation overheard. A memory that seemed insignificant at the time, but has been sitting uneasily in the back of someone's mind for 8 months. That is what this reward is designed to surface. That is what investigators are hoping will come forward. If you know anything at all, contact the Pictou County District RCMP or submit a tip anonymously through Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. You do not have to give your name. You do not have to be certain. You simply have to share what you know and let investigators determine whether it matters. Because here is the truth about cases like this. They break because someone talks. Not always because of forensic breakthroughs or surveillance discoveries or investigative masterstrokes. Though those things matter, they break because someone who has been carrying something finally puts it down. Because a conscience reaches its limit. Because a person decides that what they know is more important to share than it is to keep. Somewhere out there, someone may be at that limit right now. Lily and Jack Sullivan deserve the truth. They deserve to be found. They deserve for anyone who knows something to understand that silence has a cost, and that cost is measured in 2 children who have not come home. The surveillance footage from May 1st, 2025 shows us exactly who they were. Present, real, alive, moving through the world on an afternoon that should have been forgotten the moment it ended.